this unit we're going to talk about voice leading from one chord to the next when the bass notes are the interval of a fourth or fifth apart. Let's look at our first example. We're in the key of D, and I have the bass notes for both of our chords written in, but not the upper voices yet. So our bass note in our 5 chord, which is an A, C sharp, E chord, is A, and it's moving down to a D in our 1 chord, which is D, F sharp, A. So from A to D is the interval of a fifth, and our bass note has moved down the interval of a fifth. Now, when we come across this situation in part writing, you have 3 different rules you have to follow. Number 1, you have to make sure that the root of your triad is doubled in both chords. So our first chord is A, C sharp, and E, so we have to make sure that we use A twice. I'm going to go ahead and part write the first chord. Let's see. In our alto, I'll put the other A. In our soprano, I'll put the C. And then in our tenor, how about I put the E there? That's the only place left. Alright, so for this chord I have made sure that I doubled the A. And in a second, we'll double check and make sure I do that in my second chord as well. Now, the second rule when you're voicing one chord to the next, when your bass is moving a fourth or fifth, is to make sure that you keep a common tone. A common tone is going to be a note that both chords have. So in our A, C, E chord and our D, F, A chord, A is the common tone. Now I would go to a place where I have A in my chord, namely the alto, and to keep it in common, I'm going to make sure our A stays in the same voice for the next chord. Since this is a D, F, A chord, I know I'm going to need an A, and I'm going to keep it in the same voice and the same octave that I had it in from the previous chord. So it's going to stay in the alto voice. Alright, and then our third rule is to make sure that the 2 remaining voices move in a parallel stepwise motion. So that means that they have to move the same direction, and they can only move by 1 step, or going up to the very next line or space, or the very next letter name. So you can't have any skips here at all. Let's see. In our 1 chord, we have a D and an A already, which means we're missing an F and another D. So what I need to look at is where my soprano note is and where my tenor note is, and figure out how I can make them move in a stepwise parallel direction. If I put our remaining D in the soprano, our soprano note has moved up 1 step. If I put the F in the tenor part, then our tenor has moved up by 1 step as well. Therefore, we have met rule 3, which is to move in parallel stepwise motion. Both soprano and tenor are moving up by 1 step. So just to recap, you have to make sure that you double the root, which we have done in both chords, A and A, and then for our 1 chord we have D and D. You have to make sure you keep a common tone in the same voice. Since we figured out that A was the note that both triads had in common, I kept A in the same place that I had it originally in the first chord. And then number 3, you have to make sure that the 2 remaining voices move in parallel stepwise motion. Again, our soprano moves up by 1 step, our tenor moves up by 1 step. They have moved in parallel stepwise motion.
She's got a ticket to ride. She's got a ticket to ride. She's got a ticket to ride. And she don't